In this section, we are asking you to think about what factors would be most likely to influence your decision regarding whether or not you would participate in a clinical trial if asked. We would like you to consider 5 attributes or characteristics that our research has deemed most important when considering whether or not to participate in a clinical trial. And these will be presented to you in the choice card like seen on the screen here, where along the left-hand column of the choice card are the 5 key attributes listed. We will now explain what each of these attributes mean. The first attribute is communication. This describes who initially communicates information about the trial to you. This information could be communicated to you by your GP or your practice nurse at your primary care centre, or it could be communicated to you by the clinical trial team. The next attribute is financial incentive. This describes whether or not you would receive payment as an incentive to participate in the clinical trial. You may not receive any payment, or you could receive anything from 100 to 400 euros as a one-off payment incentive. The next attribute is the likely benefit obtained from participating in the clinical trial. There are 3 possible outcomes here. The first is no benefit. This describes where there is no chance that your participation in the clinical trial would lead to an improvement in your health. However, your participation will help society by contributing to medical research and will add to scientific knowledge. The next possible outcome is moderate benefit. This describes where there is a 1 in 20 chance that your participation in the clinical trial will lead to some improvements in your health, which may not be obvious to you, for example, a lowered cholesterol. Again, however, your participation will help society by contributing to medical research and will add to scientific knowledge. The third possible outcome here is large benefit. This is whereby there is a 1 in 20 chance that your participation in the clinical trial will lead to a meaningful improvement in your health, which you will notice in your day-to-day life. For example, a reduced body mass index. Again, your participation will help society by contributing to medical research. The next attribute is the likely risk of side effects as a result of participating in the clinical trial. And again, there are 3 possible outcomes here. The first is that of minimal risk. This is whereby there is a 1 in 20 chance of you experiencing an adverse side effect from participating in the clinical trial, which would necessitate you visiting your GP. The cost of this will be covered by the trial team. The next possible outcome is moderate risk. There is a 1 in 20 chance of you experiencing an adverse side effect necessitating an accident and emergency admission to you. The cost of this will be covered by the trial team. The next possible outcome here is high risk. This is where there is a 1 in 20 chance of you experiencing an adverse side effect, which would necessitate you spending a number of nights as an inpatient in the hospital. Again, the cost of this will be covered by the trial team. The final attribute here is the follow-up time. This is the length of time that the trial team will be monitoring and collecting data from you for the trial. And again, there are 2 possible outcomes here. The first is less than 1 year. The other is 4 years. That concludes the 5 attributes that we're asking you to consider. Now a reminder of what the choice cards look like. So from, for example, option A, the orange colour coded, we can see that the communication will be communicated to you by your GP or your practice nurse. The financial incentive given to you will be 300 euros. There will be a high benefit, a likely high benefit of you participating in the clinical trial. There will also be a high risk of you participating in the clinical trial. And the time taken, or the time that you will be involved in the clinical trial, is 4 years.